But first to the coronavirus crisis. Well, an outbreak of new infections in Victoria has started a fresh panic. Yet again with the panic. Is this the start of a second wave? And this has rocked the rest of the country. Well, around most of Australia, we've actually seen no new infections in the past day. Queensland, South Australia, Western Australia, Tasmania, Northern Territory. New South Wales had just 2 new infections, one from overseas, safely in quarantine, so we should be happy. But Victoria. 16 new cases today. In fact, Victoria's had more infections these past days than it's had for a couple of months, as high as 25 new cases on Saturday. Panic, panic, panic. And New South Wales now says, oh my God, don't go to Melbourne.
We would recommend people not at this stage travel to Melbourne unless they have to.
Well, Western Australia's Premier says this is so dire that he's dropped his plan to scrap his state's travel ban.
The current situation in Victoria is dire. I had planned to announce a tentative date for the removal of WA's hard border as part of our roadmap today. However, with the situation evolving in Victoria, based on our health advice, we've decided to put that on hold.
You know, never mind that the travel bans there are one reason that Western Australia now has the country's highest unemployment rate, more than 8%. Why don't we just panic and kill more jobs, Premier? Smart work. Now, before the panic junkies take over again, let's look at the facts. First, 16 new infections in Victoria over the last day is not great, but it's lower than yesterday, and that was lower again than the day before, 25. So this virus is not getting away from Victoria's health officials who are out there busily testing and tracing to catch anyone who might be spreading it. Second, even in Victoria, there are still just 5 people in hospital. The last time that any Australian died of this virus was a month ago. And remember, our death toll, 102, is still way below the number of people who die each flu season. So don't panic. And the country's chief medical officer sure isn't.
I have great confidence in the Victorian response. This obviously was of concern. They are responding very, very effectively, and we need to watch things over the next few days to see how it happens. But I think the early signs are that it's not escalating at the moment.
And there are some interesting things about the Victorian outbreak. The new cases are mostly in outer suburbs, poorer and Labor voting suburbs, very multi-ethnic suburbs where some public health messages might have trouble getting heard or heeded. Police will now step up door knocking and patrols in those areas. And interesting, just one family cluster over 9 households in Kedo Downs produced 11 cases. Another family cluster in Coburg, 14 of the cases. Big families. Be interested to know what families, what's the dynamics here. And it's also interesting that even the Victorian government has finally learned that the old way of tackling this virus caused too much pain to do it all over again. Victoria is not going into another lockdown. It's not banning fishing, not banning learner drivers from going out with mum on the road. Yes, it has now said that you can only have 5 visitors now in your home, and yes, it's panicked enough to suddenly change its plans to let restaurants go this week from 20 customers to 50. A lot of restaurants will have bought a lot of food they've now got to throw out. Thank you very much, government. But that's at least it. And if anything, the Victorian government will limit travel to the worst-hit suburbs only, which makes sense, although it's a bit half-hearted about even that.
We have not issued stay-at-home directions for those hotspot areas, but of course we don't rule anything out.
But it is sensible from a national perspective to say if these areas can be avoided, if people can understand that other parts of the country are less of a risk than these particular areas, then just make a consideration about your travel plans for these areas.
Okay, so all in all, it seems that we are finally getting a little bit of perspective here. There is no vaccine, and the dream of eliminating the virus completely, well, most politicians have finally given that idea up because the cost of trying is horrendous. and failure is almost certain. So they've gone back to saying we just have to learn to live with the virus, suppress the curve, just learn to live with the virus and not without it, and learn to take our chances.
This is part of living with COVID-19 and we will continue on with the process of opening up our economy and getting people back into work. But there will be setbacks from time to time. We can't just shut everything up forever. The economic impacts of that are devastating.
That's so true. And we've got to have that approach everywhere, like the AFL. The AFL had Essendon's Conor McKenna test positive for the virus after breaking social distancing rules. So it did postpone yesterday's Essendon-Melbourne game. It's probably smart, but the competition itself will continue. The game must go on, and so must the country. So please, no panicking.